Welcome, listeners, to the Lust for Life podcast. This is your host, Tennessee Reed. Hey, everybody, welcome back. I hope you had a great week full of great improvement and endeavors. I can't wait to hear about it on social media. Again, we're so happy to have you. Today is a very exciting episode. We have a really exciting guest, a really cool person, and somebody who's really, really, really good at mountain biking. This is Christopher Blevins. He competed in the mountain bike race of the Tokyo Olympics, the last Olympics, and he's also the cross-country world champion in mountain biking. You guys, he's like legit. He's so freaking cool, and we're so excited to have him. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Well, thanks for the intro. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I've been on a lot of podcasts talking about, you know, bikes and bikes specifically and in the weeds of all the details. So it's fun to talk to someone my age who's, really interested in people in all endeavors. And I love the title of your podcast and I love the theme of, talking about our journeys as young people. And yeah, so it's fun for me to be on this kind of podcast and not maybe you'll ask me the nerdy questions about the bike, but
I can't make
yeah,
any promises because I also love mountain biking. Just kidding.
great. All
We
right.
won't we won't ask you those questions today. Well, Chris, thank you again for being here. It's really, really an honor to have you. You're an awesome person. You have such a bright spotlight and you do so well with it. So keep up the great work. And like you said, our podcast is a little different than a lot of other hobby podcasts. Our podcast really likes to capitalize on emotional intelligence, resilience, and building those strategies to building a lust for life and a beautiful life, because that's truly what we're all here for, is to have a beautiful life that we can all reflect back on and be proud of. And clearly, you've done well with that. And you have made yourself, the top mountain biker in the whole world. It can't have been easy to get there. And there had to have been so much resilience and learning that went into that. And would you mind sharing kind of your story a little bit and how you became resilient and worked your tail off to get where you are?
Yeah. Well, you know, I I've been a bike racer my entire life since I was 5 years old. Um, and when I was like six, I was extremely serious and I was in kindergarten, but traveling around the country, going to BMX races, which is BMX is like this circus of little kids racing their bikes. My dad literally would place me in the starting gate and catch me at the finish line. Um, so, I've grown up through bike racing, not just with it, but like it's been kind of the one constant in my life. And yeah, so I think it's brought me every kind of emotion, showed me, I've had so many happy light moments on the bikes and plenty of like really, dark, difficult moments. Um, so yeah, I see resiliency as first and foremost has to be kind of tethered to loving what you do. And the bike is the love I have for it. Sometimes you hate it when you're, in the middle of a hard workout or a difficult period in the season. But um, I've stuck with it, and it's become kind of inseparable from my growth. Um, so I could talk about all the hard work, which is never something to neglect because there's so much hard work every day, and then this sport is very lonely at times. We're out there training. Training is a interesting thing in cycling because you're by yourself and you have some data on your head unit computer which sits right on your handlebars, and you can track how hard you're going, your heart rate and everything, and that links back to a coach. Mine's in South Africa who analyzes it later and stuff. So you don't get the team sport atmosphere of a coach yelling at you and teammates cheering you on and doing it with you. It's really you out there sometimes for 5 hours on the road by yourself. So I've gotten to a point where it's so familiar and I'm so comfortable with kind of hard work being a habit. Um, but I don't want to shortchange like, yeah, the hard work. But in a lot of ways, I don't want to talk about kind of the hard knock way of doing it because, like I said, I think that the love and kind of the sensitivity is what is equally as important as gritting through it. But yeah, from age 5 till now, I'm 25, about to be 26, and I've had a lot of setbacks. I've had a lot of injuries. I've had a lot of hard years and a lot of great ones. Um, as you can probably imagine, yeah, I mean, tons of crashes here and there, and the
Yeah.
resiliency to get over an injury is very different than just working through a hard day. You kind of have to flip the approach on its head. But yeah, I mean, it's a great topic, and there's so much I could ramble about. Um, but I think the core of what I believe in and what I've learned is love and sensitivity. It has to be paired with hard work. Otherwise, you're kind of just hitting yourself over the head with a hammer.
Something that I really liked that you said was you're out there on your bike for 5+ hours a day by yourself. There's no teammates there. It's you. And that's interesting because it's you are your own accountability. Like as team sports, it's easy to get hyped up, hype each other up. Let's freaking do this. Let's get it done. But with individual sports such as mountain biking, it's you. Like you are showing yourself the respect and showing yourself that you can do it. And that can't be a skill that came easy because I also feel like we're so detrimental to ourselves sometimes. And so I feel like it could go either way. If we have a great mindset, then an individual sport is great because no one's holding you back. But you have to build that mindset. Was that something that you had to really work hard at?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I've had so much of my success comes from a support system. First and foremost, my parents. My dad has been my right-hand man in the sport my whole life. And when I was 6, obviously I'm just a little kid and I, need someone to push me. And I had a natural kind of pull towards racing my bike, but I had coaches who would, you know, kind of do the classic, make me sprint until I threw up. This was when I was like 8 years old and did like 100 push-ups a day when I'm 9 and all that. It's kind of funny to think about, but I think now the margins of success are so small in this sport. Like the difference between first and 40th is just a tiny 0.5%. Because when I race in Europe, I'm racing the best in the world, and um, it's different than team sports where I guess like there's no hiding, and if a bad day's what's happening, there's no escaping from it. So since the margins are so small, the accountability becomes so important, and listening to your body becomes so important. So like there's a lot of times where I've pushed too hard, like I've done too much and I didn't recover enough, and recovery is just as important as training. And I think that applies to life. It definitely applies to life as well, right? We can work so hard, but if we don't sleep, if we don't really reflect and take time to let whatever, to put it in training analogies, the stress you do when you do a training workout, if you don't allow that to kind of take root, then you're just going to burn the wick at both ends. And I think that definitely applies to any pursuit. Um, but yeah, so what it's taught me, just to kind of drill down on the lonely 5-hour rides, is how to know myself at a fine level, and how to like be always in the dance between like finding the right point between too much or not enough, hitting the sweet spot every time. Um, and motivating myself when I need to push and then pulling myself back when I need to, recover. Um, so I'm really thankful for how introspective riding my bike is. And when I'm out there for 5 hours, and some days I listen to music or podcasts, some days I just listen to nothing for 5 hours. And it's a very meditative experience. And yeah, I'm really thankful for just the fact that I can go ride 100 miles and see places that I otherwise wouldn't.
That's really cool that you're able to use that time as kind of a meditation in a way. Um, because I feel the same way when I'm jogging. I actually prefer not to listen to anything because it's weird. I don't know if it's like physiologically like the blood flow to your brain, but you think so much more clear when you're like exercising. Do you like feel that also?
For sure. Yeah. So many of my like best and ideas come on the bike and yeah. Um I think it's just when you like have this balance between nothing going on, but you're just riding your bike, but everything's going on because you're just riding your bike, you know? So um for sure, and tons of good conversations with friends and yeah, a lot of interesting thoughts.
So with these hours of like long training, obviously you had a goal to get to the Olympics and you made it, and you didn't just make it, you did really, really well. You took 14th, which is amazing. But that goal probably didn't come overnight.
Yeah.
At what point were you like, this is happening and it's gonna get done? Like, was there ever a time when you just flipped the switch and you're like, I'm awesome and we're gonna do this and we're
Yeah.
gonna make it and we're gonna do awesome when we do it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, um I went to college at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, and the Olympics was always something I had dreamed about, obviously. And I'm from Durango, Colorado, where it's kind of crazy. Like every one of the last five or something Olympics, there's been a male from Durango who's gone for mountain biking. So like it's a town of 20,000 people, and it's like the hotbed for mountain biking. So like my neighbor was an Olympian. So
Oh
I
my
knew I
gosh.
could do it from a young age, but it wasn't until probably 2 years into college, I was racing multiple disciplines. I was racing on the road as well as the mountain bike, and decided to just focus on the mountain bike for 2 years. I lived with our mutual friend Anders Johnson, who we had a different college experience because we were both training and racing full time, and I would take the spring quarter off to travel and race from like March until September every year. But yeah, halfway through college, I really decided to kind of have a singular focus. And obviously COVID pushed everything back a year. So that was a really interesting experience of for me it was good because I was young and I could have one more year to train, but I spent all of COVID, you know, just doing what I normally do, which is riding my bike and hanging out with Anders essentially. So I was really focused because that's kind of yeah, how my life was. School was a great kind of other thing going on to remind me that there's more than biking. And I intentionally chose a school that had other stuff going on. But when it came down to the Olympics prep, um, I really allowed myself to have like a singular focus on it. Um, and yeah, and then 2021, I made it.
What was the hardest part about preparing? Like, was there ever a time that you felt like it was just falling through your fingers and you weren't gonna make it, or B, did you ever feel like you had imposter syndrome too? Like,
Mm,
were there ever those hindering factors that you really just had to ponder and work through and do the work mentally?
yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, the experience of a bad race, like, for people who um haven't done an individual sport, like it's hard to maybe describe, but like you're giving just as much or more than when you're winning, but everything's going bad and you're kind of clawing away trying to get there. So every, one of those really bad races you have, they are massive challenges to really accept and realize that this is where you were today, but it doesn't define, what your next step is. And I think I've learned that I can't control the outcome. But when bad races happen and I get all of those feelings of like, man, I'm I'm not there. Um, how do I beat those Europeans? All of that. And yeah, it's a really, you know, vivid emotion when you're in that place. But I think I've learned that all you can do is all you can do, and you just got to focus on the next step one at a time. So it kind of brings you back into being present. Um, but yeah, in the lead up, I can't think of like one particular instance, one challenge I had to overcome, but it's really that daily process where there's plenty of good days and plenty of really bad ones. Not getting too high or too low, I think is the best approach.
I find it really, really interesting that you discussed being present because previous athletes that I've had on my podcast talk about that. They talk about the value of being present and not only in their sport, but other aspects of their life of you can do what you can do. You've done the preparation, trust your body, and the outcome is the outcome. But the best thing you can do is like be present, which is probably really, really hard when you have a goal like the Olympics, because you're constantly thinking about that goal in the future, and then it probably distracts you of like planting your feet where you are. Are there any tactics that you've used to like bring you back to Zen, bring you back to the present moment, and having to consistently remind yourself of that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the that's kind of the core reason we do sport in a lot of ways is like it's such a great, flow state inducing activity, whatever it is. But um, for those few moments when we're racing or, you know, playing soccer or whatever it may be, like sometimes it's the only thing that matters. And that's what I'm really most like personally thankful for with what I do. But yeah, for the past 5 years, I've been consistently meditating and really kind of using mindfulness as a North Star for how I approach the sport. Because meditating on a cushion, I could talk a lot about how it's been such a useful tool for me. But the second you get up from that and have to go wash dishes or get ready to ride or, talk to my parents or whatever it may be, like those are the moments where, yeah, presence is always the thing that brings you into more connection with the world. And on the bike, I mean, it's essential because you can't think about what you did wrong 10 minutes ago or 10 seconds ago, or where you're going to be, at the end of the race. And it's such a seemingly difficult thing you kind of hinted at. Like it's sort of a paradox when you strive for a goal, but yet you're always trying to live in a way where the journey is the goal. And, you're always where you are, nowhere else. So dealing and living through that kind of you know, again, seemingly contradictory thing of going for something that's out there in the future, but realizing that the only way you'll achieve that at some point is by being present wherever you are. That's the key kind of uh, defining thing in my life right now, I'd say. So it's a really interesting thing. Yeah. And I hope that sort of makes sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, any pursuit should be, and I really believe all of us are doing difficult things because they teach us how to be more present. Sometimes we blow through and forget that that's kind of the key in every moment and every endeavor.
I think that not being present is a very large reason for a lot of mental illness
Yeah.
because of the worry and how much stress we put on ourselves to start saving for our Roth IRA, start saving for our 401k. Like there's so many things thrown at us that like completely tear us from the present. And that is a skill that I'm working on. And I feel like if you can master that skill of being present and just taking seriously one step at a time and focusing on each step, like the sky is the limit. Like you could pretty much do anything because you're not focused on what other people are thinking. You're not focused on, oh, what if? You're focused on, I'm just going to do this one step ahead. And I
Yeah.
think it's so interesting that we set goals sometimes because, like you said, it literally pulls us from being present and it can be overwhelming.
Hmm.
Like, setting too high of a goal can be debilitating, but then if you don't set goals, then you're not pushing yourself. So I guess, like you said, it's just that dichotomy of finding that balance of having our eyes up at the goal, but making sure we're fully aware of where our feet are.
100%. Yeah. And like one thing I've thought about a lot about is where does planning for the future happen? Like it always is happening now when you're doing it, Like if I leave this podcast and I start planning my race calendar and where I think I'm going to be in March and where I'm going to be in June before the Olympics, like all of that is kind of constructing a future that doesn't exist. But I think it's possible to plan for our futures like in the present moment. And again, that kind of paradox, I think, is one that we can work through and realize that you can't be anywhere else but where you are, and that's a good thing. And yeah, no, but the catch is really easy to fall into with something that's so goal oriented, like racing your bike, or yeah, I mean, a normal desk job is very goal oriented as well. So um, I definitely think that goals are a great thing, and like you said, we should have something to some outcome on the horizon that we're shooting for. But I love this quote. I read this book, Lion Tracker's Guide to Life. It's just really cool. It kind of teaches you about South African lion trackers. But he says, I don't know where I'm going, but I know exactly how to get there. Um, which is great. Like you don't know where you're going, you really don't know where you'll do tonight. You can think but the way you get there is just now happening a bunch of times. Um, and yeah, that's really the approach I've tried to live by. And it's definitely a lot easier said than done. And there's tons of moments where, I have a bad training ride and start spinning into the past future cycle again. But having a little bit of curiosity the whole time, I think is a good approach when those things happen.
It's almost like you have to like plan it strategically so that you know the steps that have to be taken. So there's not the unknown there. So you know the baby steps that need to be taken. That quote also reminded me of like the Forrest Gump movie of like how many things he accomplished. He did such amazing things, but he had no idea where he was going. Like he just kind of like found where he was meant to fit in and he fit in there and he didn't show resistance to life. Like
Mm,
God and the universe gives us these opportunities that we shut down because society tells us we're supposed to look a certain way, we're supposed to be a certain way, and then it gives us that curiosity kind of goes away. Like those
yeah, yeah,
opportunities are just stripped from us that like truly we are manifesting, but we don't open that door because we feel like we're supposed to live a certain way. And that's just like kind of heartbreaking to think about.
yeah, for sure. Man, you should get Forrest Gump on the podcast. He's
Oh my
talk about
gosh.
yeah.
I wish.
No, but yeah,
Man.
talk about a lust for life. Like, and I love the scene. I was just made me think of when he is running and just decides, yeah, I think I'll go home now.
Yeah.
It's to know that and to not be like, oh yeah, everybody's watching me and I'm supposed to be doing this run and I have all these people behind me, but like to be so um connected to yourself where and you're just aware, like, oh yeah, it's time to go home. Um yeah, Forrest Gump is
Speaking of that, it
yeah.
reminds me, Jake and I, my husband Jake, are training for an ultra marathon. And I personally have not had like a great relationship with food. Like I've always kind of been aware of what I've been eating.
Mhm.
So I wasn't listening to my body in any way. And this ultra marathoning is so long and so strenuous that you have to eat while you're running. I'm sure you feel like this
Yeah.
on biking
Yeah.
too. But you have to be so in tune with your body. Like, and I feel like I lost that. I was never in tune with my body until I was forced to go like Forrest Gump. Feel like I'm running for days on end. And then I'm forced to eat while I'm running because I like need the calories, but it has forced me to know my body, know when I
Mhm.
need to walk, know when I need to eat, know when my body's tired. And I'm sure you felt the same way with your body. You just are connected with your body in a different way that I seriously didn't think was possible. Like I can tell when I'm like what food I need and when. And I'm sure you felt
Yeah.
this too. It's
Yeah.
like a different connection with your body, like mentally, spiritually, and physically.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. And I think like before we had all these data tracking apps and nutrition apps and everything, like I don't know, some of the best athletes, the people that I look up to the most are like the simplest. They just I've had a teammate who never thought about, never used numbers, never did anything like this. And like, how is he so good? And it's just because he lived in the mountains of Italy and just, followed his instincts and developed that like listening curiosity relationship with everything he came across. And yeah, and that's again what sport is such a gift for us is to teach us that. And yeah, it's crazy how much you need to eat. Like, especially, yeah, how many carbs you need to eat. Like I had a hard workout today and before my hard workouts, I have 170 grams of carbs, which is like
My
a
gosh.
massive stack of
Yeah.
pancakes. So
It sounds like you have done a lot of work, obviously physically to get where you are. You're going to do amazing in Paris, but you've done so much work physically, mentally, emotionally. You're so in tune with yourself. You even hinted that you've applied this to other aspects of your life and found peace and success with that. Is there a message specifically that you'd kind of want to send off with our audience tonight?
yeah, well, typically when I get asked that, it's like, what would I give advice to young kids racing their bike? And I think the same advice I'd give to them is, yeah, applies to anyone is like you have to sort of what I started with. You have to love what you do. And it's so simple. And sometimes we don't need to hear that. It's like, oh yeah, okay, fine. Like give me the real thing. That's like valuable. Um, but you can't just have rosy, happy moments all the time. And that's why we should do hard things. But if you love yourself and you love the process, then I think you come into a deeper relationship with whatever it is. And it's not about the bike. The bike has just kind of been my vessel for 20 years of knowing myself and knowing my world at a deeper level. And it's a very personal pursuit a lot of times, but I think it like helps me understand universal emotions. And I'm so lucky to have the chance to travel the world and meet all these people and share it because um, the bike is, yeah, this fringe sport that not many people do, thinking of racing your mountain bike. But um, I just love the fact that I get to connect with people and share this pursuit that brings out so many emotions. And that's that can be all of us, I think, with finding those little things. And it can be in the most monotonous job where you find that. So yeah, and go ride your bike. It's fun out
Get
there.
outside, enjoy
Yeah.
the nature.
For sure. For sure.
Thank you so much for that message, Chris. That was wonderful and well spoken. And we're all really proud of you and cheering you on and know that we'll be watching you in Paris this year and we're excited. Thank you again for being here and for sticking it out so that you can have that spotlight you do and use it for good like you have been. You've done so many great things and inspired so many. So we're proud of you and keep up the great work. And we're so honored to have you here tonight. And listeners, I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did. It was a true honor to hear the words from Chris and just know like every aspect of sports is also applied to every other aspect of life. And living in the present is truly key. It's way easier said than done, but there's ways to practice and nothing comes perfect without practice. So this week, let's take a few deep breaths. Let's feel our feet on the ground. Let's stay grounded. Take the blessings in that you're currently having. Set those goals, but remember to be present. Thank you all for joining in this week, and we look forward to see you back next week.
Thank you guys. Good to be here. Thanks, Tennessee.